I run the hospitality and gaming group for Valuation and Advisory within Cushman Wakefield. And Valuation and Advisory is one of the principal service lines that Cushman Wakefield has, in addition to capital markets or sale brokerage, leasing brokerage, and property management. And my group, it's sort of multifaceted. I have a team of 3 in New York that handles the New York tri-state area, a national team of about another 25 people, and then people globally as well that in total, in conjunction with the US and New York folks, number about 60 or 70. And what we will do is we'll handle any valuation and advisory assignment to do with the hotel space, anything to do with hospitality or gaming. So it could be a full service, limited service hotel, a timeshare project, a casino, be it land-based, riverboat casinos, anything of that nature, timeshares, what have you. And we'll also, in conjunction with our retail, residential, or office groups, handle major mixed-use projects in the major cities. Our client base typically is comprised of the large money center banks, large owners, anybody and everybody who has an interest in any of these properties that we're being asked to take a look at. The term advisory is very broad. I mean, it means different things to different people. What we tend to do is get involved on the feasibility / market analysis side of things. We tend not to get too deep into the weeds on the operational side. We leave that to the asset managers for the most part. The types of advisory questions that we're asked are typically, does this project make sense given its cost structure, given the resulting value? What would happen if we renovate all or a portion of the rooms in this particular hotel? If we add a water park, what impact would that have on the property? That sort of thing. Generally to do with the creation of value and the cost to create that value. Value creation, I mean, in the hotel space, it's really, there's 2 facets. There are the fundamentals, in other words, the supply and demand for room nights. And depending on what market you're looking at, as we sit here in August of 2006, November of 2016, the New York market is sort of lagging the broader national market and many of the other major metro markets, and that's largely due to an increase in supply, both in terms of traditional hotels, as well as the onset of sites like AirBNB. So we're seeing a little bit of value erosion, actually, in many places in New York right now, which is not unheard of, but unusual for a market like New York. The flip side of that is the demand for real estate as an investment. And with all the issues that we have here in this country, many of them brought to light by the current political race, we're still viewed by the rest of the world as the safest bet on the planet, by and large. For better or worse, yes or no, those people that are in charge of placing capital and investing capital worldwide in real estate look to the United States as still the safe haven. And then within the United States, the gateway cities, the ones that are most often cited, New York, San Francisco, Boston, DC, LA, those are the cities that are kind of the absolute center of the bullseye. The demand for a product is still high, and we think, particularly in light of things like Brexit, where London and New York had kind of run neck and neck in terms of attracting global real estate capital, London may have kind of taken a step back now in terms of its desirability in the eyes of global investors. So we think that the demand for product will continue to be high, and the fundamentals will ebb and flow. New York, as I mentioned, and the energy-based markets are seeing a little bit of a downturn at this point. A market like Nashville or Austin, however, they're doing quite well. So it's really those 2 components that drive value. Airbnb is a classic example of sort of technology and the markets outpacing regulation or legislation. And I think there are quite a number of chapters yet to be written, on that score. At the end of the day, all that the hotel industry asks for is to be able to compete with Airbnb on a level playing field. And having spoken to a number of people at Airbnb, they're of the same opinion. They want to compete on a level playing field as well. So that involves life safety, ADA, Americans with Disability Act access, paying taxes, be it occupancy taxes, sales taxes, whatever taxes are applicable to that municipality. And I think Cuomo's bill, setting aside the legality of renting a place for less than 30 days when the owner's not present, those are the main issues. Whether the other portion of the bill that he's getting through, which is what I just mentioned, the illegality of letting, or the question of legality of letting somebody rent out their unit, their home, while they're not home for less than 30 days, I think that could put a crimp in Airbnb's business. Whether and how that is actually followed through on and how it's enforced is another question. I mean, the flip side of the coin is that many people are now relying on sites like Airbnb to make ends meet. And you've probably seen, as I'm sure many of the people who are viewing this have seen, the various sort of ads out there on one side of the coin or the other. But I think it's an evolution, and it's going to evolve in different cities in different ways. But it's, regardless of how it evolves, Airbnb and similar sites, let's face it, they're here to stay. They're part of the hospitality landscape, and we as an industry, particularly hotel owners and managers, will have to learn how to respond to that. But at the end of the day, it should result in a better travel experience for everybody. I mean, if hotels, and what we've been hearing from a lot of hotel owners, managers, brands, is that one of the best ways to respond to the threat of Airbnb is to provide a more genuine, more local experience to their traveler. And if that's what they're able to do somehow, some way, I think there'll be better operations and better companies for it. As I mentioned earlier, the United States and those gateway markets are still, sort of the center of the bullseye. I think we're at a point in the cycle now where a lot of investors are not as highly motivated to place capital as they were. The thought being that we're sort of past the peak of this cycle, such as it is. The recovery is a little bit long in the tooth, and the upside may not be as robust as it had been earlier in the cycle. So there's still money out there to be placed, and it could be from sovereign wealth funds, institutions, ultra high net worth individuals. Instividuals is a term I've heard, which is an individual that has so much money it almost acts like an institution. But they're not as likely to pay for a property based on a 3% cap rate as they were 6, 8, 12 months ago. That's probably ratcheted up a little bit. Well, I started in public accounting right out of school, worked for, and I'm dating myself by saying this, Arthur Young, one of the former Big 8 firms. Got my CPA after 2 years, and real estate had always sort of attracted me. The notion of the multifaceted nature of any particular real estate investment, it could encompass a little bit of marketing, some finance, some development, some planning, some construction, management, the financial aspect of it, always interested me. And ultimately the interaction of real estate with people and the way that real estate has to adapt to the changing needs, wants, and desires of the people that it's servicing. So I was always interested in real estate, wanted to be a developer, and left public accounting to join a small valuation firm in New Jersey, thinking that would be a good way to kind of learn the industry, learn what creates value, learn what detracts from value. And the more I got into the profession, the more I enjoyed it, and the less I wanted to be a developer. I mean, my income kind of kept going up. The roles that I had kept sort of increasing in responsibility and interest. And I, after 5 years with that small firm, went to Cushman Wakefield in Stamford, Connecticut, kind of a satellite office, if you will. And 5 years after that, moved into what was the global headquarters in New York. And at that time, I had been working, as many of the people in our group were working on a variety of property types. One week I'd be working on an office building, and the next week an apartment building, a hotel, industrial building. And I was attracted to the hospitality space, in part because of the mundane nature of beating your head against the brick wall that's represented by a 200-tenant office rent roll, and why the tax pass-throughs are not working here, but they appear on the cash flow, and major tenant CAM pools if you're talking about a regional mall. And that was just a bit tedious for me. Whereas hotels, it's a lot more multifaceted, certainly on the revenue side. And why is one hotel, which is virtually identical to another hotel across the street, performing better? The branding aspect, the management aspect, and I think the hotels, given their dynamic nature, I mean, basically one-night leases as opposed to office or retail or any other property type, which would have a minimum of 1-year lease on up to 20-year leases. Hotels will reflect a change in the economic climate virtually overnight. And that's more interesting to me. And then also I think hotels, and probably in second place retail, are the most the quickest to adapt to changes in human behavior, which I find fascinating. For me, there are sort of 4 things that you want to, sort of 4 arrows you want to have in your quiver, if you will. You want to be a team player. You want to have a good attitude, a strong work ethic, and I'd say good technical skills. You don't have to be a rocket scientist. You don't have to be, in Mensa. But if you've got a good grasp of the fundamentals in terms of cash flow modeling, present value, and then I'll work backwards. If you're willing to work, it doesn't have to be 80 hours a week. Our business typically is not that type of business, but be willing to work 50, 60 hours a week without complaint. Something that's sustainable, but not necessarily going to be week in and week out. A good attitude. People want to work with people that they like, and that's be your coworkers, your clients, what have you. You can be the smartest person in the world. If nobody wants to work with you or you can't communicate, why bother? And then the good attitude and team player. Again, that kind of good attitude and team player sort of go hand in hand. But if somebody feels that you screwed them on a deal, they're less likely to want to work with you down the road than if everybody feels like they were treated fairly, or maybe not everybody came away thinking they got exactly what they wanted. If that's the case, then everybody probably did okay. And hand in hand with that is really don't burn your bridges, and don't burn your bridges. Be a team player and good attitude, or sort of 2 of those 4 legs that I think are important.